Mohammed Akoojee, thank you so much for joining us. You are the CEO and Managing Director of DP World, sub-Saharan Africa region. So, Mohammed, when we just think about the opportunities across the continent right now, the African continent right now for DP World, where are you seeing the most opportunities popping up?
Yes, good day, Jennifer. We're seeing opportunities across the continent. Because as you know, logistics and supply chain into East, West, and Southern Africa is complex. The cost of logistics and supply chain across Africa is very high relative to other global markets. And because of the relatively poor infrastructure, the logistics opportunity is huge in Africa. There's 1 billion plus people on the continent. So I wouldn't say our strategy is focused on particular areas. We have a very good footprint across, the 48 markets in sub-Saharan Africa. And we have a very reasonably sized business. We have 27,000 people, and we cover ports, terminals, logistics, supply chain. So we are a well-established player across the continent and, see an opportunity across the markets I mentioned.
How much demand are you seeing, though, especially when we think about demand for copper and cobalt playing into the increased investment that DP is making across Africa? Is that having an effect, particularly on where you're going?
Yes, we're one of the largest freight organizations that move commodities into the copper belt. So this would be Zambia, as well as the southern part of the DRC. As well as then commodities out of that region. We've seen demand increasing over the last few years, largely driven by, the whole electrification drive globally and the demand for commodities like cobalt, copper, lithium, and we've been beneficiaries of that. We do see that in recent times with, freight rates increasing and shipping capacity being utilized on other trade lanes, that demand has tempered a bit, but generally, demand levels are still quite good.
Do you expect that? I mean, what's your expectation for the rest of the year and even potentially for the next few years? Do you think growth will continue to be fueled by commodities, especially in the area?
Yes, we do see that, in the medium and longer term, that the demand for these commodities will remain high because there's a big drive towards cleaner energy, and these commodities are very much needed. So definitely we're gearing up for that. We've just been granted the concession for the port in Dar es Salaam, and Dar es Salaam plays a key role in the movement of those commodities. Largely today, our business is moving product through Mozambique. And now that we've got the port concession for Dar es Salaam, we've got another trade lane or corridor to export the product. So we're gearing up for growth in those commodities in that region over the medium to longer term.
Mohammed, what about the South African ports? And I mention it because recently they were ranked as some of the worst ports in the world. I mean, are you looking into working with some of the state entities, in particular in Cape Town and Durban, to privatize some of these ports and develop them a bit more?
Yes, absolutely. We participated in the RFP process or the port concession process for the Durban port. We were not successful there. But, as, South Africa, moves forward on privatization of Transnet, we remain interested in those opportunities. So we're keeping quite close. We have a very well established. Yeah.
Were you surprised then to see the rankings, or was this a bit expected?
No, I mean, we all know the numbers, right? So I was not surprised to see that the turnaround time of trucks into our ports in South Africa, the waiting times of ships at Anchorage, our clients feel it, daily. So no, I was not surprised to see the numbers.
Are you seeing more investment, not just from DP World, but other private investors really coming in and trying to have a slice of the pie of the port system across Africa? Is it really sort of gearing up and heating up from what you can tell?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said, when I started, the infrastructure of Africa has got still a long way to be developed, including port infrastructure. And we are seeing players from other regions, wanting to expand into Africa. So the competition is there for port expansion.
Where do you see the most competition coming from?
It's across the board. I mean, we all know that there's big players like AGL, there's players like Abu Dhabi Ports, there's players in the Asian markets. So yeah, it's not in specific areas. I would say it's across the board. A good level of interest in terms of new port development from our global competitors.
So in terms of DP's strategy then on the continent, I mean, what is it that the company is sort of focused on to differentiate itself?
Yeah, so our strategy is to combine our global port network, our port capability on the continent, as well as then our downstream logistics capability from a freight perspective, air and ocean freight, road freight, warehousing, distribution services. So our value proposition to a cargo owner is to provide a service and move your cargo from anywhere in the world into Africa end to end. And with the capabilities we have in ports, the freight management, contract logistics, and distribution services we offer, we can provide that into a number of markets across Africa.
Where are you not, Mohammed, where you're maybe looking to expand, and in particular when it comes to partnering with the public sector across the continent?
Yeah, I think if you looked at in our region where there's a big population and port opportunity, it would be we fairly light in West Africa. I think we could do more there. And then on the east side of Africa, we've now got the port concession for Dar es Salaam, but there is opportunity to expand further there. So I would say for me on the East Coast and West Coast, if there were port opportunities there, we would look at it.
Are you speaking at all to or with Kenya about the port in Lamu? Because that is another port that has really been talked about in terms of private investment coming in and helping support its growth.
Yeah, look, we have these conversations all the time. In Kenya's case specifically, there is a public process around privatization of some of the ports there. So yes, we will be, certainly interested in that.
And how are you, Mohammed, just finally, how are you navigating a lot of these public-private partnerships, especially where there are administrations and governments that are changing hands quite quickly across the continent? I mean, how is it that the company is navigating that? What are the conversations that you're having?
Yeah, look, I think as DP World, we make a big impact on the development of a country. We play a big role in the employment of a country and the economic growth of a country, because by putting up, port infrastructure, you facilitate all of that. So, changing of governments doesn't impact that. Every government that comes into power needs, good infrastructure to drive economic growth, to create jobs, and grow the economy. So, we because of the type of business we are and our way of investing into the markets, because we don't only invest in port infrastructure, we also invest in the economic free zones, etc., which facilitate value-added services, which facilitate manufacturing sectors coming into the country. And any government that comes into power at any point in time finds us as an attractive investor in terms of the development of that economy.
Has the macro environment affected that at all in any of the regions where you're working?
Look, the macros in Africa have been challenging in the last 12, 24 months with, high inflation, high interest rates, the currency devaluations in certain of the markets, which has had all a negative impact on economic growth in Africa. But it's a cycle, and it certainly hasn't impacted our appetite for growth on the continent. We're still investing. We have a plan to invest, about $2 billion over the next 3 to 5 years into new port infrastructure on the continent. Because one has to take a long-term view on these things and not let short-term macros, impact that. I started by saying, what are some of the logistics challenges in Africa? But within that, there's so much opportunity, and one needs to take a long-term view on that.
All right. Mohammed Akoojee, thank you so much for your time, Mohammed.